Chapter 27. The next day was a Wednesday, and Gwendraeth filed an incident report stemming from a robbery that had taken place in the Take and Go Electronics Centre, which had recently opened in the new development centre near the place where the old rubbish dump used to be. Someone had smashed a window and made off with several computers and a mannequin dressed in a short skirt. Then he was trying to field off a request to go and see Superintendent Harding in his office when Harry Warden stumbled into the office carrying a dusty cardboard box. "Thought you'd better see, Chief." "See what, Warden?" "Someone's been playing games with the old Henrietta James files. Took me a while to find them all. Had to go across the road to the old building. They've turned the basement into an archive, or tried to. Tell you what, someone needs to get to grips with the filing system, if you ask me." "Did they, Warden?" "What, Chief?" "Ask you." Harry Warden dumped the cardboard box down on his desk. There was the smell of old paper and neglect. And dust. Lots of dust. He didn't answer Gwendraeth's question exactly. "Never mind about that. It's kind of controlled chaos over there, it is. All it needs is a pipe to burst or something, and there you have it. 50 years of West Wales crime turns to mush." Gwendraeth wasn't in the mood to care about the general safety of records that morning. He thought he knew why Harding wanted to see him, and he didn't want to think about that either. Not for the moment. "The box," he said. "That's just it, Chief. That's the whole point," Harry Warden said. "When I got to the box where the file should be, there was a different one in it. Different James altogether. Some miner who broke into a school and a petrol station. Must have been the first of the teenage delinquents. Except he was too young. He was only a kid. There was no sign of the Henrietta James murder at all. First I wasn't worried. I thought it was a question of misfiling. So I went through all the other boxes and I couldn't find Henrietta James at all. There was Harold James. There was Ian James. There was a John James. But no Henrietta. No mention of Plas Wern Las at all. Not a smidgen. That's the same as pigeon, is it? Without the neck movements?" "Chief." "Forget it, Warden," Gwendraeth said, looking at the state of his sergeant's suit. There was dust all over the back of his jacket and what looked like a handprint on his left sleeve. "Get yourself cleaned up." "Will do," Harry Warden said, turning to make his way out of the office and down the corridor to the washroom. "And by the way, I almost ran into Chief Superintendent Harding on the way to the lift. He wants to see you. Pronto." Gwendraeth tried not to think about Harry Warden's last remark and went over to the sergeant's desk and idly turned over the contents of the box. There was a large pink cardboard folder with a faded typed label that said Wyndham James. Inside was a smudged carbon copy of a report related to attempted robberies at a school and petrol station on the edge of town. The culprit had been only 11 years old at the time and had been released into the custody of his parents with a warning. There had been no prosecution. A detective named Myrick Evans had handled the case. His attention now aroused, Gwendraeth dug deeper into the folder. There were some preliminary reports and not much else. Then, just as he was about to give up, Gwendraeth gave the folder a final shake. A small rectangular photo of a schoolboy in a blazer fell out. Gwendraeth picked it up. It was a photograph like 100 others from the same period. In it, a well-scrubbed, dark-haired schoolboy with straight black hair parted on the right-hand side looked at the camera without smiling. First, Gwendraeth recognized the uniform. There was no doubt about it. The striped tie and the badge on the black blazer, a kind of castle with a crest above it, told him that the school was his own, St. Illtyd's. Then, a closer look at the photograph confirmed his earlier suspicion. The boy in the photograph, the one who'd been accused of breaking and entering, was the ex-MP and former friend and heir of Parker Merriam, Wyndham Spencer James. Gwendraeth put the photo in the file and placed the file back in the box on Harry Warden's desk. Then the phone rang. It was Chief Superintendent Harding. He wanted to see Gwendraeth immediately. It must be a kind of power play, for it seemed to Gwendraeth that every time he entered Harding's office after being summoned, he was sure to find his superior on the phone. This time was no exception. Harding was talking attentively into the mouthpiece when Gwendraeth entered, and he only looked up long enough to indicate that Gwendraeth should sit down. Something was up. Gwendraeth was sure of that. Harding was wearing his full dress uniform, and his peaked hat lay on the desk next to the phone. "I haven't got long, Gwendraeth," Harding said, as soon as he'd finished his call. "I've got to attend an awards luncheon with the Lord Lieutenant of the county." "So what exactly is happening with a solution to the Parker Merriam case?" "It's not a puzzle," Gwendraeth said. Came out before he could stop it. "Pardon?" "It's not one of those cases where you need something ingenious to work it out. One of those where you assemble everyone in a room and accuse the person you didn't first think of. Gwendraeth, do you realize who you're talking to?" Gwendraeth didn't feel like apologizing, so he didn't. "I'm working on it," he said. "Yes, but what exactly are you working on?" "I think it's connected with his family, with where he was living," Gwendraeth said. "Usually is. We've eliminated the daughter from our inquiries now. The son's already returned to London." "So you're just waiting for something to turn up, is that it?" "I'm digging into the background. It's more complex than we thought. Parker Merriam was connected to..." "I know all that," Harding said. "We've been through this part before. I just don't want you interfering with things that don't concern you, that's all." "Like justice?" Gwendraeth thought. He didn't say it out loud. Harding seemed to be about ready to leave, and if he were lucky, he wouldn't have to say too much. "So, what am I to tell the Lord Lieutenant about the shooting of this solicitor?" Harding insisted. "I'm having lunch with him today. Bound to ask me. Tell him it was a flesh wound from a 7.62mm standard NATO issue rifle," Gwendraeth said. "We talked to the doctor who treated him. And who was responsible? I don't know that yet. I'm going to find out," Gwendraeth said. He meant it. Harding then dismissed him with a wave, and Gwendraeth left. When he got back to his office, it was nearly 12:30. Harry Warden was standing over his desk, fingering the small photograph that Gwendraeth had found earlier and put by the side of the box. "You saw what I meant then? The Henrietta James file is missing, and Boyo here is in her place." Boyo sounded slightly odd in Harry Warden's accent, Gwendraeth thought. Didn't quite have the right stress. "And what a boyo he is," Gwendraeth said. "I don't get it, Chief. He looks like any other schoolboy to me." "Like any other schoolboy from St. Illtyd's who happened to be caught in 2 cases of breaking and entering when he was only 11 years old," Gwendraeth said. "Like any other boyo who now happens to be an ex-MP who inherited most of Parker Merriam's money and who now runs a fancy windmill company." "That Wyndham Spencer James," Harry Warden said. "You can't be serious." That's when I do my best work, Gwendraeth said. I'm no good as a comedian. A few hours later, Gwendraeth nosed the BMW through a narrowing roadway until he finally came to a barred gate that said private, no admittance. He stopped the car alongside the other vehicle that was parked there, a grey Land Rover Discovery. Jesus, Chief, Harry Warden said as he squeezed out to the passenger side of the car that was pushed right into the hedge. Didn't leave me much room, did you? With all that exercising you've been doing recently, didn't figure you needed much, Gwendraeth said. He couldn't explain why part of him enjoyed making Warden feel uncomfortable, but he did. His secretary said, "Go through the gate and onto the moor, didn't she?" Warden said, brushing some dead leaves off his jacket. This must be the one. They'd called into the headquarters of Western Winds earlier, but Wyndham Spencer James hadn't been there. When Gwendraeth persisted in asking where he was, his secretary had reluctantly revealed his whereabouts. So here they were now, a mile or so above the nearest farm, at a point where the public road petered out and a footpath began. Farther down, there was the roof of a house which Gwendraeth knew must be Plas Wern Las. To the right, the footpath curved away from them and climbed higher, winding its way between outcrops of grey limestone that hunched on the landscape like some forgotten Neolithic attempt at a sculpture. On top of the biggest and highest clump of grey rocks, shading their eyes and apparently looking out at the expanse of Cardigan Bay, which stretched away far on the horizon, were two figures wearing wax jackets and flat hats. Must be them, Harry Warden said as they walked up the narrow path. Clouds scudded across the sky and there was a slight wind. Who exactly? Wyndham Spencer James and someone. Well done, Warden. I mean, there's no need to be sarcastic, Chief, is there? Harry Warden said. I'm only doing my job, after all. It's not just a job, Gwendraeth James said, as they scrambled around a protruding rock. Apparently, it's an obsession. Who told you that, then? My ex-wife. Harry Warden took a deep breath and caught up. Well, I wish they told me that before I signed up. They walked towards the two figures who were standing on top of the rock outcrop. Sorry to disturb you, sir, Harry Warden began as he and Gwendraeth approached the two men. There's no need to sir me, Sergeant, Wyndham Spencer James said as he turned towards them. You know very well who I am. Patrick Lancaster, the other man said, nodding as they got closer. Environmental engineer. He's a wind specialist, Wyndham Spencer James said. He's helping me to place the turbines. I thought they called them windmills, Harry Warden said. Like I said, I think we could place 10 at the most, Patrick Lancaster continued, speaking to Wyndham Spencer James. That includes the 3 on the brow of the hill. I need 15 to make it work, Wyndham Spencer James said. He lifted his hat from his head. I need to talk to you about something else, Gwendraeth said directly to Wyndham Spencer James. Not now. I'm busy. Wyndham Spencer James turned his attention back to his consulting engineer. Not too busy to look at this, Gwendraeth James said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the small rectangular photograph that had fallen out of the file earlier. Where did you get this? Wyndham Spencer James said, after giving the photograph a quick glance. He'd obviously recognized himself immediately. And what does it mean? You tell me, Gwendraeth said. It fell out of a file. A 50-year-old file that was related to a break-in in a school and a petrol station. That face might look innocent enough, but it isn't. But you know that, don't you? Wyndham Spencer James detached himself from Patrick Lancaster and moved towards Gwendraeth. This is harassment. This is unwarranted intrusion in the private affairs of others. I'll see you suffer for this. Patrick Lancaster was obviously embarrassed and began to move down the hill towards the path. Gwendraeth made no move to stop him, or Wyndham Spencer James, as the latter, after glaring once more at Gwendraeth, followed the other back down to the path. What was that all about then, Chief? Harry Warden said, as he watched the two men go. I wanted to shake him up a bit, Gwendraeth James said. A cloud moved slowly across the sky. The sun threatened to come out. Well, you certainly did that, Harry Warden said. Aren't you taking a bit of a risk with him, though? The way he's feeling? I can stand it if you can, Gwendraeth James said. He watched the two figures in waxed jackets as they made their way towards the scattered blackthorn bushes at the bottom of the path. Somewhere, a bird called. On the way back to Miser Bond, Harry Warden took a call for Gwendraeth as the latter drove more slowly than usual down the steep, winding lanes that led away from the open land above Plas Wern Las. Until a phone rang, there had been an unusual silence in the car, and Harry Warden hadn't quite known what to make of it. He was grateful for the distraction despite the fact that the reception was bad. He lost the call as they went round a bend, and then the phone rang again. The ringtone was a 12-bar blues. Yes, Harry Warden listened to the familiar voice on the other end. It's Gwendraeth Davies, the duty sergeant, he told Gwendraeth. There's a woman called Anne Davies who wants to see you. Anne who? Davies. Apparently she's the daughter of someone else of the same name who used to work in Plas Wern Las. She says it's connected with Parker Merriam. Does she? She lives in a cottage called Soon Anant. It's on the edge of the village near the river. It's called Waterside. Not a very Welsh name, is it? I can't help that, Chief, can I? Gwenville Morris says she thinks it might be important. And he does he? Gwendraeth put his foot down as the car came out of the twisting network of B roads that surrounded Plas Wern Las. What are we up to then, Chief? Soon Anant, Warden. There's a shortcut in about a mile or so. Leads off the main road, comes in at the humpback bridge near the old post office. I'll try the GPS. I don't need the GPS. Last time I used it, sent me past the mortuary near the old hospital. I was only looking for the dentist. So, I want the front of Waterside, don't I? I want the house. I don't want to end up in the river. It was a small cottage that someone had tried to convert into a bungalow without success. A squarish, plain-fronted, white-painted building with cement-rendered sides and PVC windows. It tended towards the nondescript, except for its location and well-tended gardens. Waterside stood slightly askew to the B road that ran through the village of Soon Anant. There was a gravel forecourt to the front of the building, and it was screened from the rest of the grounds by a lattice-work fence covered in climbing roses that had now died back. Either side of the house, terraced gardens stepped down to the river. In one of these, to the left of the building, a compact woman with shortish auburn hair was forking over a vegetable plot. Anne Davies, Gwendraeth called out, but his voice was lost in the sound of the water coming from the river below. As he and Harry Warden walked down towards the bending figure, Gwendraeth noticed she was younger than he'd first thought. She couldn't be more than 35 or so, he realized. The movements were quick and strong, and she was obviously enjoying her work. When they were still one level above her, Anne Davies glanced up, rested on her fork and said, "You didn't take long." "You know who we are then?" Gwendraeth said, going down the steps towards her. Harry Warden followed him. He walked like a policeman, I expect you talk like them as well. But she did smile as she said this. Her voice was well modulated. It was an odd but well enough intentioned remark, Gwendraeth thought. That's what we are, miss, Harry Warden said. I'm not surprised if it showed. You wanted to see us, Gwendraeth said, holding up his ID. You called a station at Maisabont. I did, if you're Gwendraeth James, she said to him fluently in Welsh. I can't read that without my glasses. He answered her, and then they resumed speaking English in front of Harry Warden. What was it you wanted to see me about? Gwendraeth continued. Now that credentials had been established, he was anxious to get to the bottom of it. Parker Merriam. She gestured with her free hand as she spoke. He loved this place, you know. I always thought, well, it's obvious, isn't it? The bungalow is nothing special, and even the name is a bit of an embarrassment. But the garden, the river, he loved them both. Always? Gwendraeth said, surprised. Well, always in our case was 5.5 years, Inspector, Anne Davies said. I was his mistress. I thought it was about time you knew about it. She paused and then explained. I tried to hide it at first. I thought it was best. But then you didn't seem to be making much progress. So I decided enough was enough. I didn't think he had it in him, Gwendraeth James said 10 minutes or so later, when they were sitting in the large main room of the bungalow. It looked much better inside than out. A large patterned sofa sat in front of an open fireplace. It was flanked by 2 small antique oak tables, each with vases of early yellow chrysanthemums. It was a light and pleasant room. That was the main thing about Parker, Anne Davies said. People tended to misjudge him because he was quiet. They didn't realize he was not so much quiet as concentrated. You don't mind if I quote you directly, miss? Harry Warden said, looking up from his notebook. No. But nobody says miss anymore, Sergeant, Anne Davies said. If they didn't teach you that in the police academy, then they should have. I've been trying to tell him, Gwendraeth said. He still thinks it's polite. Parker tried something like it once, Anne Davies said. We were in a restaurant in Carmarthen when he tried to refer to me as his better half. I told him straight, Parker, I said, I'm no more virtuous than you and anyone else. In fact, my mother thinks I'm less. She's the one who worked at Plas Wern Las, Gwendraeth said, remembering the message from Gwynfor Morris at the station. Anne Davies was being pleasant enough, perhaps too pleasant. He was glad she'd called him, but he still wanted to get on with the main reason for the interview. You are fundamentally a policeman, aren't you? Anne Davies said, perhaps sensing his mood. I mean, at bottom, you're probably nothing but cop. She was the housekeeper, Gwendraeth insisted. She was, years ago, Anne Davies admitted, before I was born. She loved that place, you know. She always talked about it. She's dead. She's dead. Parker's dead. And I'm left with a daughter and a bungalow full of memories about a quiet man whom hardly anyone understood. Perhaps not even me. I'm sorry, Harry Warden said. My condolences. My mother died some years ago, Anne Davies continued. She had severe arthritis and early onset Alzheimer's. That's why I try to keep active and keep my brain alive at the same time. I don't want anything like that to happen to me. That's why Parker was good for me, see? I think I got more out of him in 5 years than out of anyone else in my whole life. didn't have any small talk, Parker. He was very stimulating for a quiet man. You don't have to be full of yourself to be interesting. Your daughter's his? Gwendraeth asked. Of course she is, Anne Davies said. You think I got time for a toy boy as well? I don't know, Gwendraeth said. I'm not psychic. Obviously not, Anne Davies said. Otherwise, you wouldn't need to be here. There was a change in her tone. I loved Parker for just over 5 years. I think I loved him from the first day I met him. He was standing in front of the honey stall in an agricultural show outside Carmarthen. I was helping a friend out. She keeps bees in the Black Mountains and she produces her own honey. Anyhow, Parker bought 2 pots of honey for me that afternoon and I had dinner with him that night. It all started from there. And we had just over 5 very happy years together. He had everything to live for, Parker. That's why I know he couldn't have committed suicide. He had me, he had his daughter Jennifer, who's only just started preschool. He was a quiet man with a future. And now I don't want to hide anything anymore. I want you to know everything about him. And I want you to find out who killed him. You've met his other daughter, Harry Warden said. Samantha, the one who lives in Plas Wern Las. No, I haven't, Anne Davies said, reaching into the pocket of her jeans for a handkerchief. There were no obvious signs that she'd been crying, but she wiped her eyes anyway. I've got nothing to say to her, have I? I think she's only a year or so younger than me. What would I say? I'm not sorry I shagged your father, and I'd do it again. I got better things to do. Besides, going to Plas Wern Las would be very painful for me. My mother loved it too much. I played up there when I was small. While she was looking after everything, see? Does she look after Martin James as well? Gwendraeth asked. He was in school with me, so I know he's about the same age. Just then, there was the sound of footsteps on the path, and the mail popped through the letterbox in the far end of the cottage. Anne Davies excused herself, went and picked up the mail, and placed it in a neat pile on the floor next to her chair. I don't know about that, she said. She might have. She worked for both brothers, the one who died in the car accident and the older one. He was difficult, he was. He was the one who sold everything. All the house contents. Nearly broke her heart, did it? Did you know that Paul James, the older one, is living at Treddeg Rectory? Harry Warden said. That he knew, Parker? Anne Davies nodded. I knew, but I didn't say anything to anyone. Parker might have mentioned it once or twice. But I've never been to the rectory since it's renovated. Parker and me, we kept everything secret. He always came to see me. I never went to see him. He bought me the bungalow after the baby was born, set up a trust fund. He was on his way here the day he was killed. In Paul James's car, Gwendraeth said. Anne Davies looked at him directly. Yes, she said. He was a natural environmentalist, Parker. He didn't see any reason to own a car of his own if there was one he could use. He was at peace with himself. He wasn't greedy. He liked sex in the mornings and he wasn't afraid of doing it in the light. Anne Davies broke down for the first time. I'm sorry, Gwendraeth said. He meant it. Anne Davies had given him a different perspective on Parker Merriam, and in some ways she was the one who seemed to have lost the most by his death. I couldn't even go to the funeral, Anne Davies continued. I didn't want everyone to know. And then something happened. It changed my mind. Why? It's not easy to say. It's complicated. It's connected with my mother and Plas Wern Las. Yes. Wyndham Spencer James phoned up after Parker died. The two things weren't directly connected, but they changed me. He does this from time to time, Wyndham Spencer James. He wants something my mother left me. Anne Davies got up for the second time and walked over to a small chest of drawers under the window. It had nice proportions and a curved front and was probably antique, Gwendraeth thought. She opened the top drawer and held out an object for them to see. It was about a foot long, and it moved slightly as she held it. It was a carefully articulated human skeleton carved out of bone or something similar. It was light in some places and darker in others. The limbs shook as she walked back across the room towards them. My mother bought this and the chest in the same auction, Anne Davies said. That's why I've always kept them together. They both belonged to Plas Wern Las. And Wyndham Spencer James wanted them. He still wants the skeleton, Anne Davies said. It used to belong in the curio cabinet, and he has that. He says the Scrimshaw was carved by his own great-uncle, and it's his by right. Scrimshaw? Anne Davies held up the slightly moving skeleton so that Gwendraeth could see it. There's carvings all over it, she said. In the light you can see labourers and an island and something that looks like a ship. Bit spooky if you ask me, Harry Warden said. He didn't even want to touch it. Take a look. Anne Davies handed Gwendraeth the skeleton with one hand, and with the other she reached for a black-handled magnifying glass that lay on the coffee table in front of the settee. She gave him that as well. Sometimes I use this when I'm doing crosswords. Gwendraeth took the magnifying glass and held the skeleton up to the light. Among the dark, etched miniature carvings, he could see what looked like an island. A dark place where small boats gathered and loaded something from what looked like a quarry. Men were digging and loading, and a large ship seemed to be waiting for its cargo. Parker said the island was in South America, Anne Davies said, as Gwendraeth put the magnifying glass down. He knew about things like that. The guano trade, solidified bird droppings for fertilizer. That's how Josiah James made his money. That's how he bought Plas Wern Las. Gwendraeth James carefully handed the Scrimshaw skeleton back to Anne Davies. There was nothing more to say for the moment. A silence descended. It was as if they both understood the significance of the moment, but were not quite sure where to go next. Thank you for telling me about Parker Merriam, Gwendraeth said after a while. Then he indicated to Harry Warden that it was time to leave.